confirmation from our very own Foreign Secretary Robin Cook, who's in the Far East at the moment, that Diana, Princess of Wales, has in fact been killed.
The tragic and untimely death of Princess Diana has remained one of the most scrutinized and debated events of the modern era. Decades later, new revelations from individuals closely connected to her, her surgeon, MonSef Dahman, her personal driver, Colin Tebbutt, and her butler, Paul Burrell, have reignited the speculation and theories surrounding the nature of her death. Their candid admissions, which seem to align with long-standing suspicions of a meticulously orchestrated plan, have left the world in a state of disbelief and unease. These revelations offer a fresh lens to examine one of history's most captivating and controversial mysteries, leaving no detail untouched as they piece together the chain of events leading to that fateful night in Paris. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Princess Diana's death has always been a topic of intrigue, wrapped in layers of unanswered questions, conflicting testimonies, and evidence that many believe points to something far more sinister than a simple car accident. At the heart of the new revelations is MonSef Dahman, the French surgeon who worked tirelessly to save Diana's life on the operating table. His reflections on that night cast an unsettling shadow over the sequence of events, hinting at irregularities in the handling of her treatment and the timing of medical interventions. Dahman's perspective challenges the widely accepted narrative that Diana's injuries were unsurvivable, raising chilling possibilities about external influences. Colin Tebbutt, Diana's personal driver, has also offered insight into the moments before and after the crash. His intimate knowledge of Diana's movements and his recounting of her patterns shed light on the broader context of the night. Tebbutt's revelations paint a portrait of chaos that seems too coincidental to be purely accidental. He has pointed out peculiarities about the vehicle involved, the security measures, or lack thereof, and the presence of suspicious figures around Diana and Dodi Fayed, her companion. These details deepen suspicions that the circumstances of the crash were manipulated to ensure the outcome. Adding further intrigue to the narrative is Paul Burrell, Diana's former butler and one of her most trusted confidants. Burrell's testimony is rooted in years of first-hand experience with Diana's fears, concerns, and insights. He has alluded to Diana's growing anxiety about being targeted, particularly in the months leading up to her death. Burrell's recounting of conversations and the unease Diana expressed about the forces she believed were working against her only amplify the gravity of these new revelations. His statements dovetail with what many have theorized for years, that Diana's death was the culmination of a premeditated effort to silence her. The implications of these revelations extend beyond the realm of conspiracy theories, cutting to the heart of the power dynamics and institutions that shaped Diana's life and death. For years, her vocal opposition to the status quo and her humanitarian activism placed her at odds with powerful entities. Her decision to step outside the boundaries of royal protocol, particularly through her outspoken approach to sensitive issues like landmines, AIDS, and her tumultuous marriage to Prince Charles, made her a polarizing figure. It's no stretch to imagine that these actions earned her enemies who saw her as a liability. What makes these new accounts particularly compelling is how they expose cracks in the official narrative. Each revelation adds a layer of complexity to what had been accepted as an open and shut case. Questions arise about why there were delays in getting Diana to the hospital, why her security detail appeared insufficient for someone of her prominence, and why key witnesses from the scene have offered conflicting or incomplete testimonies. The involvement of these key figures, Dahman, Tebbutt, and Burrell, lends credibility to the growing suspicion that Diana's death was more than a tragic accident. MonSef Dahman's detailed account of Diana's injuries and the efforts made to save her underscores the peculiarities of the medical response that night. Dahman has stated that while Diana's injuries were grave, they were not necessarily fatal under ideal conditions. This raises the question of whether the circumstances surrounding her treatment were influenced by external pressures. The surgeon's observations about how medical teams were deployed, the delay in transporting Diana to the hospital, and the prioritization of protocol over urgency all contribute to the unsettling idea that her fate might have been sealed before she even entered the operating room. Meanwhile, Colin Tebbutt's perspective challenges the logistical aspects of the crash and its aftermath. As Diana's personal driver, Tebbutt was intimately familiar with her routines, preferences, and the level of care she expected. His recounting of that night highlights gaps in security and anomalies that suggest premeditation. Tebbutt has pointed to inconsistencies in the way the crash site was managed, the behavior of the paparazzi, and the eerie absence of certain figures who would typically have been present to oversee Diana's safety. These details collectively weave a narrative that suggests a degree of orchestration behind the events. Paul Burrell's contributions to the evolving narrative bring an emotional and psychological dimension to the story. Burrell's reflections on Diana's personal struggles and her intuitive sense of danger offer a chilling context for the events that unfolded. His recounting of Diana's fears about being targeted by those who wished to silence her casts a shadow over the motivations of those in power. Burrell's insights also reinforce the theory that Diana's humanitarian work and her willingness to defy tradition made her a threat to powerful entities that viewed her as a destabilizing force. The convergence of these three voices, Dahman, Tebbutt, and Burrell, forms a powerful trifecta of testimony that challenges the official account of Diana's death. Their revelations invite a reconsideration of the role played by institutional power structures, media influence, and political agendas in shaping the circumstances of her demise. The emerging narrative suggests a level of coordination and intent that is difficult to ignore, forcing the public to confront the uncomfortable possibility that Diana's death was not merely the result of reckless driving or paparazzi pursuit, but the culmination of a deliberate plan. The implications of this are profound. If Diana's death was indeed an orchestrated act, it raises unsettling questions about the extent to which power can be wielded to suppress dissent and silence those who challenge the status quo. Diana's legacy as the people's princess was built on her ability to connect with ordinary people and advocate for causes that were often neglected by traditional institutions. Her ability to command global attention and her refusal to conform to royal expectations made her a symbol of hope and change for millions. The idea that her life could have been ended to preserve existing power dynamics is a chilling reminder of the risks faced by those who dare to challenge entrenched systems. The revelations also highlight the role of the media in shaping public perceptions of Diana's death. The initial narrative that emerged in the wake of the crash was one of reckless paparazzi chasing a vulnerable princess. This framing conveniently shifted blame away from more powerful entities and focused public outrage on a handful of photographers. However, the new testimonies suggest that this narrative may have been a smokescreen to obscure deeper truths. The media's complicity in perpetuating certain versions of events underscores the need for critical scrutiny of the information presented to the public. The renewed focus on Diana's death also forces a reckoning with the legacy of the British monarchy and its relationship with the public. Diana's popularity and her ability to resonate with ordinary people stood in stark contrast to the traditional image of the monarchy. Her death marked a turning point in how the royal family was perceived, prompting both sympathy for their loss and criticism of their treatment of Diana during her life. The possibility that her death was orchestrated by forces aligned with or within the monarchy adds a layer of complexity to the public's understanding of this institution. The convergence of these revelations has undoubtedly reignited interest in the events surrounding Diana's death, but they also serve as a reminder of the broader forces at play in shaping her life and legacy. Whether or not the truth about that night in Paris is ever fully revealed, the testimonies of MonSef Dahman, Colin Tebbutt, and Paul Burrell offer a compelling case for re-examining the official narrative. Their accounts challenge us to question the version of history we have been told and to consider the hidden mechanisms of power that operate behind the scenes. The shockwaves from these revelations are likely to ripple across public discourse for years to come. They force us to confront the uncomfortable possibility that Diana's death was not an isolated tragedy, but part of a larger story about power, control, and resistance. As the world grapples with these new insights, the questions they raise will continue to linger. Was Diana's death an inevitable consequence of her courage and defiance? Or was it a preventable tragedy that was allowed or even made to happen? These revelations do more than revisit a historical event. They invite a deeper understanding of the forces that shape our world. Diana's story is not just about a princess who met a tragic end. It is about the enduring struggle between those who wield power and those who challenge it. The admissions from Dahman, Tebbutt, and Burrell add new dimensions to this story, transforming it from a tale of loss and sorrow into a testament to the enduring impact of one woman's courage. And as the world reflects on these revelations, the question remains, what else lies hidden beneath the surface of history, waiting to be uncovered? The revelations surrounding the death of Princess Diana have always carried an air of complexity, marked by layers of intrigue, speculation, and suspicion. As MonSef Dahman, Colin Tebbutt, and Paul Burrell come forward with insights that challenge the accepted narrative, the broader implications of their claims demand further exploration. Their statements do not just point to a possible conspiracy, they compel us to examine the systems, motivations, and societal dynamics that may have contributed to Diana's tragic demise. Princess Diana was not an ordinary member of the British royal family. Her presence in the public sphere transcended traditional expectations, making her a global icon and a voice for the voiceless. Her popularity, however, was a double-edged sword. On one hand, she became a symbol of compassion and change, rallying behind causes that other figures of her stature avoided. On the other, her refusal to adhere to royal norms and her growing independence positioned her as a threat to those invested in maintaining the status quo. Diana's very existence became a delicate balancing act between reverence and resentment, a dichotomy that may have set the stage for her untimely death. Her relationship with the press is a critical aspect of this narrative. Diana was arguably one of the most photographed women in the world. Her every move was chronicled, dissected, and sensationalized by a media machine eager to capitalize on her charm and vulnerability. This relationship was not entirely one-sided. Diana occasionally used the media to her advantage, such as during her public appearances and humanitarian efforts. However, as her personal life unraveled and her relationship with the royal family grew increasingly strained, the media's intrusion became relentless. This relentless scrutiny not only heightened her isolation, but may also have played a role in amplifying the tensions that surrounded her. The idea that Diana's death was the result of an inside job brings the role of the media into sharper focus. It has been suggested that certain outlets were complicit in perpetuating specific narratives, either intentionally or unwittingly. The framing of Diana's death as a mere accident allowed more significant questions to be sidestepped. Questions about the power dynamics at play, the motivations of those in positions of influence, and the accountability of the very institutions meant to protect her. This realization casts a shadow over the media's role, not just as an observer, but as a potential participant in shaping the events leading to her death. Another layer of complexity lies in Diana's growing advocacy on controversial issues, which many believe heightened her vulnerability. From her outspoken campaign against landmines to her efforts to destigmatize AIDS, Diana used her platform to address global issues often ignored by traditional power structures. Her activism brought her into direct conflict with powerful political and corporate interests. Her global influence and her ability to mobilize public opinion made her a formidable force. For those who saw her as a disruptor, her continued presence posed a risk to carefully curated systems of control. Diana's personal relationships also became a focal point of intrigue. Her romantic involvement with Dodi Fayed, an Egyptian film producer and heir to a prominent business empire, added another layer of controversy to her life. This relationship not only fueled media frenzy, but also provoked questions about how it was perceived by those within the royal institution and broader political spheres. The prospect of Diana aligning herself with a family of significant wealth and influence outside the traditional British elite was, for some, a provocative challenge to the monarchy's carefully managed image. The night of Diana's death in Paris remains a microcosm of these intersecting forces. Every detail, from the choice of her driver to the route taken, has been scrutinized. Henri Paul, the driver of the ill-fated vehicle, became a central figure in the official narrative, with allegations of intoxication and reckless driving serving as convenient explanations for the crash. However, these claims have been contested over the years, with alternative accounts suggesting that Henri Paul may have been under undue pressure or influence. The presence of mysterious vehicles and the peculiar behavior of the paparazzi at the crash scene add further weight to theories of premeditation. The hospital response, as revealed by MonSef Dahman, adds another troubling dimension. The apparent delays in transporting Diana to the hospital, coupled with inconsistencies in her treatment, raise critical questions. In any high-profile case, the protocols followed or not followed become significant. The discrepancies in the medical response that night invite speculation about whether these actions were influenced by external pressures. Dahman's perspective, rooted in his direct involvement, provides a chilling reminder of how small decisions can carry enormous consequences. Colin Tebbutt's insights about Diana's security, or lack thereof, force us to examine the systemic failures that may have contributed to her vulnerability. Diana was no stranger to threats, both real and perceived. Her global popularity and outspoken nature made her a target, yet the measures taken to protect her often appeared insufficient. The absence of a robust security detail on the night of her death raises questions about whether this was a mere oversight or a deliberate choice. Tebbutt's reflections on the anomalies surrounding the crash site only add to this unease, suggesting that Diana's safety may have been compromised in ways that went beyond mere negligence. Paul Burrell's testimony offers a deeply personal perspective on Diana's state of mind in the months leading up to her death. His accounts of her fears and her growing sense of danger reveal a woman who was acutely aware of the risks she faced. Diana's ability to intuitively read the dynamics around her, coupled with her direct communication style, made her an astute observer of her own circumstances. Burrell's recollections of Diana's concerns about surveillance, betrayal, and threats to her life add a poignant layer to the story. They remind us that Diana was not just a figure of public adoration, but also a human being navigating a labyrinth of pressures and perils. The implications of these revelations extend far beyond the events of that night in Paris. They invite a broader reflection on the structures of power that shape public and private lives. Diana's story is, in many ways, a cautionary tale about the costs of defiance in a world that often prioritizes control over compassion. Her willingness to challenge norms, speak truth to power, and prioritize humanity over protocol placed her in direct opposition to forces invested in preserving the status quo. The enduring fascination with Diana's life and death speaks to her profound impact on the world. She was not just a princess, but a symbol of resilience, vulnerability, and the power of authenticity. Her ability to connect with people on a deeply human level made her a transformative figure. However, this very quality may have also made her a target. The idea that her life could have been cut short as part of a larger plan is a sobering reminder of the fragility of those who challenge entrenched systems. The role of the monarchy in this narrative cannot be ignored. Diana's relationship with the royal family was fraught with tension, marked by moments of alienation and conflict. Her divorce from Prince Charles and her public revelations about their troubled marriage placed her in direct conflict with an institution that thrives on discretion and unity. Diana's decision to step outside the boundaries of royal expectation, both in her personal life and her public work, challenged the very foundation of what it meant to be a member of the British monarchy. The possibility that her death was connected to these tensions adds a layer of gravity to an already complex story. As these new revelations continue to emerge, they compel us to ask deeper questions about accountability, truth, and the mechanisms of power. If Diana's death was indeed orchestrated, it raises troubling questions about the lengths to which individuals and institutions will go to protect their interests. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that those who seek to bring about change often face resistance from those who benefit from the status quo. As the world processes these revelations, one thing remains clear: Diana's life and death will continue to resonate, not just as a tale of tragedy, but as a story of resilience and the enduring quest for justice. Her legacy is a testament to the power of one voice to inspire change, even in the face of overwhelming odds. And as we grapple with the implications of these new insights, we are reminded that the truth, however elusive, is a pursuit worth undertaking. The unfolding revelations about Princess Diana's death continue to peel back the layers of one of the most intriguing events in modern history. With every new piece of information disclosed by those closest to her, MonSef Dahman, Colin Tebbutt, and Paul Burrell, the magnitude of the implications grows ever more profound. These accounts do not merely highlight specific inconsistencies or peculiarities surrounding Diana's death, They invite a much broader interrogation of the forces and structures that intersected to shape the tragedy. The story of Diana's life and death extends far beyond the immediate events of that fateful night in Paris, embedding itself in a nexus of power, influence, and control. Diana's unique position within the royal family provided her with a vantage point that few others could claim. She was both an insider and an outsider, an integral part of one of the most powerful institutions in the world, while also deeply alienated by its traditions, demands, and expectations. Her perspective allowed her to navigate the royal world with an understanding of its rigid structures, while simultaneously critiquing and defying them. This duality placed her in a perilous position, caught between the expectations of royalty and her own determination to forge an identity separate from it. The public's fascination with Diana's independence was not shared by all within the royal and political spheres. Her decision to take control of her narrative, to reveal her vulnerabilities, and to live life on her own terms challenged the carefully curated image of the monarchy. This created a tension that extended far beyond personal grievances. It became a clash of ideologies. Diana's focus on humanity and authenticity stood in stark contrast to the monarchy's reliance on protocol, tradition, and discretion. This ideological divide deepened over time, creating a sense of inevitability in the conflicts that arose around her. Central to this ideological clash was Diana's relentless pursuit of causes that others dared not touch. Her willingness to advocate for the marginalized, to address stigmatized issues, and to speak candidly about topics such as mental health and domestic difficulties made her a polarizing figure. Her advocacy on the international stage, particularly her campaign against landmines, was transformative, but it was also provocative, as it placed her at odds with powerful entities, including governments and multinational corporations that had vested interests in maintaining the status quo. Diana's activism transcended the boundaries of royal duties, making her an unpredictable and influential force on a global scale. This independence was further emphasized in Diana's personal relationships. Her divorce from Prince Charles was not just a private matter, but a public reckoning with the institution of the monarchy itself. For the royal family, the dissolution of their marriage was not merely an embarrassment, but a threat to the monarchy's image of stability and permanence. Diana's subsequent relationships, including her involvement with Dodi Fayed, further complicated her relationship with the institution. Dodi's background as the son of a wealthy Egyptian businessman and his association with the Muslim faith were perceived by some as challenges to the traditionalist values of the monarchy. This added a layer of tension and intrigue to their relationship, fueling speculation about its broader implications. The events of the night Diana died are inseparable from the forces that shaped her life. Every decision made that evening, whether logistical, medical, or procedural, can be viewed through the lens of Diana's complex relationship with the systems around her. The choice of the Ritz Hotel, the hurried departure from the back entrance, the selection of Henry Paul as the driver, and the mysterious vehicle seen near the crash site are all elements that raise significant questions. These are not random occurrences, but pieces of a puzzle that reflect the broader context of Diana's life and her position within a world of immense power and influence. Henry Paul's role in the tragedy has long been a point of contention. The narrative of his intoxication became an anchor for the official explanation of the crash, yet this characterization has been challenged repeatedly over the years. The presence of unexplained substances in his system and the peculiarities surrounding his behavior on the night in question invite scrutiny. Was Paul a mere scapegoat, or was he acting under duress or influence? The possibility that he was manipulated or coerced into actions that sealed Diana's fate adds a chilling dimension to the story. The behavior of the paparazzi, too, plays a significant role in this narrative. The accepted story is that their relentless pursuit of Diana and Dodi led to the crash, yet the exact nature of their involvement has remained murky. Eyewitness accounts and photographic evidence suggest inconsistencies in the timeline and the actions of certain individuals. The idea that some members of the media may have been acting in concert with other entities to stage or manipulate events has been a cornerstone of alternative theories. This possibility not only implicates the media but also highlights the interconnectedness of power structures that sought to control Diana's life and legacy. The medical response to the crash, as detailed by MonSef Dahman, further complicates the narrative. In cases involving high-profile figures, the stakes of medical decisions are elevated. Every action, or inaction, carries immense weight. Dahman's account of the delays and peculiarities in Diana's treatment raises questions about whether external pressures influenced the medical team's response. The French emergency protocols, which emphasize stabilizing patients before transport, have been criticized as contributing to the delay in getting Diana to the hospital. Yet Dahman's observations suggest that these delays may have been exacerbated by factors that went beyond standard procedure. Diana's vulnerability was not limited to that one night. It was a constant feature of her life as a public figure. The lack of robust security measures on the evening of her death is particularly striking. Given her high-profile status and the constant threats she faced, the absence of comprehensive protection seems inexplicable. Colin Tebbutt's observations about the lack of adequate security measures add weight to the suspicion that this vulnerability was not coincidental. The decision to rely on the hotel's security team and an unvetted driver instead of a professional security detail appears to have been a critical failure, or perhaps a deliberate choice. Paul Burrell's insights into Diana's fears and premonitions provide an emotional and psychological lens through which to view the events. Diana's awareness of the risks she faced and her intuitive understanding of the dynamics around her paint a portrait of a woman who was deeply attuned to her precarious position. Burrell's recollections of Diana's written notes and verbal warnings about threats to her life suggest that she felt her end might come not from a random accident, but from a calculated act. This awareness amplifies the tragedy of her death, as it suggests that she was acutely aware of the forces aligned against her, but powerless to escape them. The intersections of personal, institutional, and societal factors in Diana's story reveal the complexity of the forces at play. Her life was a battleground for competing interests: the royal family's desire for control, the media's insatiable appetite for her story, and Diana's own quest for autonomy and authenticity. Her death too reflects these tensions, serving as a moment where these competing forces collided with devastating consequences. The testimonies of Dahman, Tebbutt, and Burrell illuminate this intersection, showing how seemingly disparate elements of Diana's life were inextricably linked. The implications of Diana's death extend far beyond the royal family or the British media. They resonate on a global scale. Diana was not merely a British icon. She was a symbol of humanitarian values, compassion, and defiance of tradition. Her ability to connect with people from all walks of life made her a beacon of hope for millions, but it also made her a target for those who saw her as a disruptor. The idea that her death was orchestrated challenges the very foundations of justice, transparency, and accountability in modern society. These revelations also force a reevaluation of how history is written and remembered. The official narrative of Diana's death served to close a chapter on her life while leaving many questions unanswered. The testimonies of Dahman, Tebbutt, and Burrell reopen this chapter, suggesting that the story is far from complete. Their accounts challenge us to look beyond the surface, to question the narratives we are given, and to seek the truths that often remain hidden. As the details of Diana's death continue to emerge, they serve as a reminder of the fragility of truth in a world shaped by power and influence. Diana's life was marked by a relentless pursuit of authenticity, and her death has become a symbol of the challenges faced by those who dare to challenge the status quo. The lessons of her story are not just about one woman's tragedy, but about the broader forces that shape our world and the enduring struggle for justice and humanity. The world's fascination with Diana's life and death is unlikely to wane, and the revelations from Dahman, Tebbutt, and Burrell ensure that the mystery will continue to provoke debate, reflection, and investigation. As these narratives unfold, they invite us to consider the broader implications of Diana's story, about the costs of courage, the dangers of power, and the resilience of the human spirit. Diana's legacy endures not just in the memory of her life, but in the ongoing quest for truth and justice that her story inspires. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Princess Diana's death being an inside job? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.